It's funny. You can spot a poem a mile away, right? Like you see it on a page and boom, even before you've read a single word, you just know. But then if someone asks you how you know, well, that's where it gets a little tricky. So today, let's pull back the curtain and figure out what a poem's secret identity really is.
All right, so imagine I hand you a piece of paper with some text on it. What are those dead giveaways? What are the clues that just scream, hey, this is a poem? Is it the words themselves, the subject matter, or is it something else completely?
Okay, first off, the most obvious clue is just the shape of it, right? Think about regular text, prose, like what you'd find in a novel or a news article. The sentences just march straight across the page from one margin to the other. But poetry? That's a whole different story. The lines break whenever the poet feels like it, creating this really unique shape on the page. Which, of course, leads to the big question, why? Why the short lines? Is it all just for looks? Is a poet just trying to make their work look, I don't know, artsy on the page? Well, no, not at all. There's a way deeper reason for those line breaks. It all comes down to one thing, rhythm. Seriously. You can almost think of those short lines and all those breaks as a kind of musical score, but for your voice. They're basically little instructions from the poet, guiding you, telling you where to pause, how to breathe, and how to really feel the flow of the words. And to really understand why rhythm is just so important to poetry, we've got to take a step back in time, way back. For thousands of years, in places like ancient Mesopotamia, China, Greece, poetry wasn't something you just read silently from a book. No way. It was meant to be performed, spoken, or sung out loud. It was an oral tradition. And that rhythm and rhyme, well, that's what made the poem stick in your head and hit you with so much power. And all of that brings us to this really cool concept, musicality. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's that quality a text has when its pace, its rhythm, the actual sound of the words, it all starts to feel like music. It's meant to create a feeling inside the listener. Because see, a great poem doesn't just tell you something, it makes you feel it through its sound. So here's a little challenge for you. Next time you come across a poem, don't just scan it with your eyes. Actually read it out loud, even if you're just whispering to yourself. Hear the sounds the words make together. See if you can find that musicality we're talking about. Can you feel the rhythm the poet wanted you to feel? I'm telling you, it's a total game changer.
All right, so rhythm is obviously a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole story. What also sets poetry apart is the way poets choose their words. It's a completely different approach to language itself.
And you can really see the difference here. With prose, right, the number one goal is to get information across. It's about clarity. So you pick words based on what they mean. But with poetry, the goal is to create feelings, to paint pictures, to make you associate ideas. So poets often pick words based on how they sound and how they feel, not just their dictionary definition. I mean, just think about Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. For a lot of us, nursery rhymes are the very first poems we ever hear. And in that rhyme, the words star and are aren't just there for their meaning, right? They're there because they rhyme. That sound, that little musical chime, is a massive part of why it works. Now, sometimes this whole focus on sound and rhythm gets super structured. Some poems follow very specific set rules or patterns, and we call that meter. These can be rules about, say, the exact number of syllables in a line, or a strict pattern of which lines have to rhyme. It's like poetry with a blueprint. Okay, so we've talked about short lines, rhythm, musicality, rhyme, and even these strict rules called meter. It's really starting to sound like poetry is just a big collection of rules, doesn't it? So is that the answer? Does a poem have to follow these rules to be a poem? Well, actually, no. And this might be the single most important takeaway from our whole chat today. When it comes right down to it, there are no rules. None. A poem doesn't have to rhyme, it doesn't need a set rhythm, a poem doesn't have to do anything it doesn't want to do. See, poetry is really all about freedom. A poet can totally play with grammar. They can rearrange words in weird ways. They can throw punctuation like commas and periods right out the window. You know all those rules you learned in English class about how to write properly? A poet gets a free pass to break every single one of them. Because at the end of the day, what really matters isn't the structure. It's not about the rules the poem follows or the rules it breaks. What's most important is what happens inside you when you read it. What thoughts pop into your head? What feelings does it stir up? And because there are no rules, a poem can literally be anything. It can be super short, just a couple of words, or it can be super long, like an epic. It can be funny, it can be sad, it can be just for entertainment, or it can tackle some of the most important ideas out there. There are absolutely no limits.
And that leads to another really cool thing. There is no single right way to read a poem. The thoughts and feelings that a poem gives you could be totally different from the person sitting right next to you. And that's not just okay, that's the whole point. That's the beauty of it. Your experience is uniquely yours. So, when you think about it, maybe what makes a poem isn't a list of rules at all. Maybe it's more like an invitation to stop, to feel something new, and maybe see the world in a slightly different way, even if it's just for a moment. And that really just leaves one final question for you. What will the next poem you read mean to you?